Welcome to Beyond the Title, a podcast where we interview college deans from the University of Cincinnati. My name is Hayden, and my co-host is the interim provost of UC, Dr. John Weidner.
Hi, Hayden.
Our topics range from deans when they were college students to why they decided to become deans and much more. Today's guest is Ryan White, interim dean of the UC's Graduate College. Welcome, Dean White.
Thank you for having me.
There are 4 rounds of questions, with the first a rapid-fire warm-up round. Are you ready?
Sure.
Quick fire, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Morning or night?
Morning.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
So I'm sure you never have any stressful days, but if you would, in theory, how do you like to unwind?
Well, that's a good question. So, I think several ways. So I have 2 young kids, 9 and 11. So, this weekend, for example, we spent a lot of time building Legos. In fact, old Legos that we pulled out of our basement that were mine as a kid. I was impressed. They put together these old sets. If it's just me, I love to mountain bike. And Cincinnati's got a lot of great places to do that. And it's a good mind-clearing activity because you're focused on the trail in front of you and you're not thinking about everything going on at work. So
Nice.
What's your favorite spot on campus?
favorite spot on campus. That's funny. We just asked everybody in the grad college as we do questions of the day. My favorite spot on campus, I think I love Nippert Stadium, sort of being right in the middle of campus, the ability to go down there and just, it feels almost like you're breaking the rules that you get to go down there and be on the field. So I just think it's really cool to be centered there in the middle of campus.
So similarly, what about a place to eat, whether on campus or in Cincinnati?
I don't know, on campus. So if you go out to, I don't know if it's on Calhoun or over in that region, I think Good Eats is probably one of the best deals around. They have good food, reasonably priced, and nice in and out quick. Cincinnati just, to me, has a great food scene. So when we are spending time, if we have a babysitter, for example, for the weekend, we like to go downtown and explore all the new restaurants. So
If you could describe the graduate college's personality in 3 words, what would they be?
can I say small but mighty?
Yeah, that works.
I think we're a small team overall, maybe, about 10 or 12 of us, but, we serve a large population of graduate students on campus, a lot of different colleges and programs. And so it's a small but mighty team.
I love that.
And I know the graduate population is very diverse, lots of great majors, but is there one experience that you think they all need to have, they all should have to really get the most out of a graduate experience that you see?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the hallmark of graduate education is sort of that next step in critical thinking and independent thinking. And I think our programs are designed, whether it's a master's program, a doctoral program, to provide that experience. One thing I would suggest is, to find your community. And I think that's a little bit easier within your own programs with your cohort of students that you're working with. But I think getting connected to the broader campus community really kind of helps you find your place on campus. And sometimes, as you know, having gone through graduate school, if you're doing research, sometimes research is tough, right? Things aren't working. You can go months with an experiment not working, for example, in our lab. And just having that connection to campus or with other people in different fields, just to kind of feel grounded, I think is a good experience.
So are there ways that you're trying to get students out of the lab to
that's
do more than just get that data set?
Yeah, we'd like to partner with the graduate student government on their events. They host a lot of sort of community building and celebratory events. They do things like the Thanksgiving potluck. We try in the fall semester to put together a sort of orientation / resource fair to get students connected with not only other things on campus, but also in the community of Cincinnati. So I think there are lots of opportunities to do that.
What made you want to serve as the dean for the graduate college?
Oh, that's also a good question. To boil it down to one word, I think impact. Grad education is something that I'm passionate about. My academic career is really built on training and educating graduate students. I run a research lab, and all of our accomplishments, everything we've done scientifically, is really rooted in the hard work of our graduate students. And as I've sort of experienced different administrative roles, that's an area where I felt a lot of focus on is the grad student experience and making sure that we are working towards training our colleagues. And so I like the impact that this role can make in terms of the broad range of students on campus.
So if you rewind the clock a little bit, what were you like as a college student? Did you imagine being in this role?
Well,
I
think, first of all, I'm not sure I knew what a dean was as an undergraduate student. I will say I don't know if I was the best undergraduate. I think it took me a while to learn how to learn, and it really wasn't until my sort of later, maybe my senior year, where this idea of research and how that reinforces what I'm learning in the classroom really clicked. And I thought, maybe I like this thing. But college, I feel like I was a pretty typical college student. I liked going to sporting events, hanging out, and just the environment of a college campus. And I think for most of us, we've never left a college campus, right? So sometimes I feel like I've been a college kid for a long time. So yeah, I don't know if this was ever on my radar to be in this type of position. But I think, as I moved on to graduate school, the idea of teaching and being part of higher education sort of solidified for me. And so I think that's when that really started to come clearer.
Well, as a NC State grad, I certainly understand the basketball fever in the Carolinas. So I'm sure you had plenty of reasons to attend athletic events.
I mean, I wouldn't say this too loud, but unfortunately, I think I was there for some of their worst years. So.
What's a common misconception that you think students like myself have about deans?
I think that, we're normal people, right? Like, I mean, one of the things I like about this role is getting to meet, now interim provost, but, we're normal people. We like to go to basketball games at UC. We have activities and hobbies outside of our work. But I think the other piece is administrator can be or seem like a dirty word. But, one of the things on this campus I feel the deans have is a really strong commitment to student success and the student experience. And so I think, we really care about students in this campus and how their academic growth is occurring, how their life growth is occurring. And I think it's just, we care a lot. And it's oftentimes I feel like we're secluded in these offices having meetings, but all of that's really driven by making sure the students here at UC are having the right experience.
Yeah, and certainly as faculty, we spend a lot of time with students trying to impart our knowledge on them. But what have you learned from students, if anything, throughout your career in academia?
Oh, that's another good one. I think no one path is the same. I mean, what I learned for teaching undergraduates or graduate students, everybody comes in with a different set of experiences and backgrounds and abilities, and that means adjusting, I think, to give them what they need to be successful. I mean, I'm going to pick the grad side of things here in that trajectory, but like every one of the grad students I work with in my own research program, they all have different abilities, different needs, different goals, and being able to adapt to that, to see that there's not one single pathway to success was really eye-opening, right? Because you only know your experience as you go through this, and to see that really there are many ways to do it and all can be rewarding, and to see students figure out that path, it's really rewarding.
What advice would you have for UC students like myself or those at the graduate college?
Also a good one. This one might sound cliche, but don't be afraid to fail. Failure is it happens. Again, as a researcher, it happens all the time. As we think of new programs and new things to do in the academic sphere, sometimes things fail, and that's okay, right? I think the key to me is how you respond to that, right? And so what did we learn from it? Why did it fail? How do we make it better the next time? How do we ensure that we're progressing as opposed to just sort of circling in this failure mode? So it's okay to fail, right? I think we learn the most when we do.
So you've had a distinguished research career and have a lot of successes. And one recognition of this was you received the Royce Murray Young Investigator Award from the Society of Electroanalytical Chemistry. And by the way, Dr. Murray was on my doctoral committee. So I
know,
small world.
Yeah.
Just down the road, he came over from UNC to sit on that. So that was a privilege. But what did that award mean to you? And as you reflect back on that?
So it means a lot for several reasons. I mean, I mentioned sort of solidifying my desire to kind of stay in that world of higher education. That really came from my experience as a grad student in integrating into what my field and our field, electrochemistry, and the research community there. And so, Royce was a giant in that field, but also he was my undergraduate research mentor. So to have worked in his lab as an undergraduate and sort of launch my scientific career, to see that sort of come full circle, that the first year it was named the Royce Murray Young Investigator Award, I was the recipient. It was amazing.
Yeah, so congratulations.
You've been working here at UC for the last 8 years, moving your way up from associate professor to now being the interim dean of the graduate college. Similar to Dr. Weidner, you became the interim dean over the summer. What has been the biggest difference between being a professor and being a dean?
I would say the most dramatic thing is just your day-to-day life. I mean, I think, there's a lot more meetings and a lot less control over how your schedule looks, right? As a faculty, your schedule, there are meetings and it's dictated a bit by your teaching schedule, but then you have a lot of freedom with what you're doing in your time and you get to control that. My day-to-day now is very much controlled by my meetings and schedules. And oftentimes I'll have days where it's just meeting. And there's not a lot of thinking time. And so one thing over these last six-ish months is trying to get control of that to make sure I still have that thinking time. And I think that means thinking time as a dean and how we're thinking about what's next for grad education at UC, and then thinking time for research. Is just having that control of the calendar has been a hard balance, I think, over the last several months.
Mm-hmm. So we mentioned that you did your undergraduate at the University of North Carolina, got a bachelor's degree in chemistry. You moved on, got your PhD in analytical chemistry and electrochemistry from the University of Utah. You did a postdoc at University of California, and you started your as an assistant professor at the University of Maryland. So you've been at some great institutions. What perspective have you learned from them, and what keeps you at UC? What makes UC special?
Yeah.
After having again some really great experiences around the country.
Great question. I mean, prior to through my education, I always felt like if you took sort of the campus of Chapel Hill, you put it on the bluffs of Santa Barbara, I mean, you would have the best campus. But I think each of these campuses brought something different to the table. I mean, I think in terms of the culture and sort of tradition at a campus like UNC as an undergrad was amazing. At Utah, it sort of, to me, felt like a sort of growing, innovating campus set in the Wasatch Mountains. It's wonderful. Santa Barbara, to me, in terms of the research culture, was very much one of the most interdisciplinary campuses I think I've had the opportunity to be at in terms of this sort of centers around certain research themes. And then UMBC, as an assistant professor, I don't think I've worked at a more intentionally diverse campus in a way that it worked really well. And so I think there are aspects from each of those campuses. I think you see a lot of that in UC, which is exciting. I mean, I think at the time I was at UMBC, both UC and UMBC were consistently rated as, I'm going to forget the term, but the up and coming universities. And so there are a lot of similarities in sort of the ethos of each campus. What keeps me here, again, I think, is the trajectory of UC. I think, that's both at the education level and the academic level, but also the research level. I think there are a lot of great things happening, a lot of forward thinking on what it looks like, in terms of collaborative research, in terms of how do we continue to set the stage for universities and higher education. I think there's a lot of opportunity here to do that, and I think that's exciting. And Cincinnati is a cool place to live.
Well, we're glad we have you. So.
You spoke earlier about your research, and you've garnered over 150 publications from that, including your top article, Real-Time Aptamer-Based Tracking of Circulating Therapeutic Agents in Living Animals.
Say that 3 times. Yeah.
I'll try, but it won't work. Being cited by over 440 people. Besides that one, is there an article or publication that you've created that you think deserves more credit than it has been?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't want to make any grad student feel better or worse about their papers. I mean, I think every paper is exciting to publish, and usually every paper I think should be cited more than it does, right? But I would say we've made some major advances in the last several years in the group in terms of how. So you mentioned that paper that's based on a sensor platform we've been working with for several years. How we measure those, we're starting to change, and I think it will enable a lot of new things we can do with this sensor platform. And so we published a paper a couple of years ago on that measurement technique, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that I think will be one of the most influential papers for our own research program, and my hope is people will catch on and use that a little more. So.
Well, thank you to the interim dean of the UC's Graduate College, Ryan White, for coming to chat with us today. We hope that you had a good time, and we look forward to seeing you around campus. We'd also like to thank Anna and David, as well as Bearcast Media, for their support. Talk soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.